And welcome to the Barry Foster Show, coming to you from the Ridge Florist Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. If you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions, please put them in the comments below and we'll respond to them and let the algorithm know that you are with us. We are continuing well over 100 now, 125 subscribers on our way to 1,000. We appreciate everybody who's subscribed and tunes in each and every day. On the phone in the great industrialized north, we have the handsome and exciting John Larsen. Good morning, John. How you doing, my friend?
Good morning.
Coming back from the north, and last time we talked, it had done nothing but rained. Has that changed at all?
Well, yeah, in the last couple 3 days, of course, they've been hit by what most parts of the country have been hit by, which is for them unbearable temperatures like 90 degrees plus, which of course we're used to that, and that finally hasn't totally fixed the problem for what's going on up here in the farming community because the rain that they received the previous month and a half, maybe in some cases 2 months, was absolutely destructive to the farming in a lot of areas. As I told you the last time we talked a couple weeks ago, the fields that I passed, which mainly in Midwest, you're talking corn and soybeans. That's the two big crops. Some wheat, but a lot of it is corn and soybeans. And you could see the result of that heavy rain. The corn in a lot of areas was between 1 and 2 inches high. And, the old saying, knee high by the 4th of July, which is only a few days away, that corn is not going to make knee high. It may be lucky to get up to, your upper ankle or something like that. Now the heat and the sun will finally begin to allow some of the corn and soybean crops to grow finally, because when they had all that rain and all them cloudy days, and within about a week or so ago, their temperatures up there in the northern part of the country were still in the high 40s, low 50s. So not very conducive to growing a whole lot of stuff. But with the current sunshine and heat, I think they'll finally get a handle on it if they don't get inundated by more rain.
Yeah, we talked to our niece who lived up in Pennsylvania, and she was saying that every weekend has been marked by rain. She didn't mention the week because she works during the week, but her weekend plans have been spoiled by rain on each and every weekend. Have you had a chance to talk to any of the farmers up there and to kind of find out their
Yeah, I
take on
did. As
what's
a
going
matter of
on?
fact, one of the farms up in Pennsylvania, they happen to have a little store, if you will, out front where they sell, if they had it already, some of their fruits and vegetables, mainly vegetables, but also, they have flowers that they sell. And I stopped in, and at first the wife was there, and I started talking with her, and I introduced myself and told her I was doing a little, maybe you want to call it an investigative reporting and whatnot. But I said, I'm not from the government, so don't worry, I'm not from the government and whatnot. But
You can be honest.
right. But then her husband came in and we started talking, and he said that they're mainly corn. He already has put in his second crop of corn in a big part of his fields because the first crop got totally washed out. So he had to replant. Well, when you have to replant, not only do you have the expense of the replanting involved, but then also you're behind schedule when it comes to the crop being, ready for harvest. So they're going to be a month or 6 weeks or so behind schedule if they get some decent weather. Now they've had some good hot days the last 3, 4, 5 days, and some good sunshine, which is what you need after all that rain. It rained up here for months on end. I mean, if not every day, a lot of days out of those last few months, and it just literally flooded all the fields. But he told me, he said, our crop is going to be down about 50% this year, which means that everything we sell is going to be more expensive, and everything that the grocery stores receive is going to be more expensive, which in turn will be passed off to the consumer. So he said, I think you can expect some higher prices in the after the harvest season on things that involve, like he said, for things that use corn and soybeans, because they grow corn not only for livestock, but they also grow corn for public consumption and whatnot. So he said, yeah, he said, we've lost about 50% of what we expected we did in years past this year just because of all the excessive rain.
So they basically lost their first crop and are going to go for the early crop is gone. Late crop will be in, and it'll be even probably later. You reckon?
Yeah, because they were, while I was there, they were planting broccoli and I'm sorry, cauliflower, and also his, he grows a lot of pumpkins, and he's just getting those in the ground, and also the cauliflower and some other crops that he was just beginning to plant because they couldn't get into the fields. Literally, the fields were so wet, you couldn't get in there to do anything because if you got in there with your tractor, you may have to get your tractor pulled out because the fields were that wet. But again, thank goodness they've gotten some really hot temperatures and some good sunshine. And so maybe some of the crops will be able to get going now. When I was driving around the other day in Ohio, middle part of Ohio, I did go by some fields that evidently had either good drainage or they, in that particular area, didn't get as much rain because their corn was up to about a foot high and so on. But a large part of it in Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania that I saw, it was again very just sticking out of the ground an inch or two.
Well, that's one of the problems in being a farmer. You are at the mercy of what the Lord has to offer in terms of growing conditions. And this year, at least in Pennsylvania, the growing conditions are not very good at all.
No, I'll tell you what, and as I told him, I said, I can't wish you enough good luck because I said, without you, I don't eat. All right. And that's what most Americans need to appreciate about the farmers. Without the farmers, we don't eat and so on. So and you're right. They have to put up with so much, not only the increased cost, forget the weather part of it, just the increased cost of things like fertilizer, seeds, help, all of that has increased dramatically. And then you throw in the bad weather over a period of a couple of months, really has set the farmers back. And that unfortunately is going to affect, what their costs are, which will ultimately will affect also, what they have to sell it for.
Now, I know that when you've been up there in the Midwest, you've been on the back roads and had a chance to look at the farmland. When you're coming back north or coming back south, or when you went up north in the Carolinas and in Georgia, did you get a chance to see any of their crops? Have they been uh, affected likewise by bad weather?
Well, I don't think they have had as quite as much rain here, as heavy rain here, and consistent rain as they had in the Midwest and the northern part of the country. Mainly because the crops that I've seen, I've been by some cotton fields, and that crop looks like it's up. I would call it. I'm not a farmer, but I would call it normal size, if you will. So I don't think their weather in those parts of the country was hit quite as hard as it was in the Midwest where I spent more time.
Well, one good news is that the gas prices apparently are at an all-time low, or at least a 4-year low. Locally here, the cheapest gas price that we have is up here in Avon Park at 2.85. I guess nationally it's going to run between 3 and 3.20. Uh, did you see that kind of those kind of gas prices up there in the north?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I did because although forget Pennsylvania, it has the second highest gas tax in the country next to California. So they are totally off the chart. Their gas is 3.59 a gallon and has been for a long time. But it's forget that one. But other parts, like I told you the other day, lower parts of Ohio, I saw gas coming up in the 340s. Now I've seen it in the 350s, like 358, 356, and so on. As a matter of fact, I'm sitting under a Love's gas station sign right now, and it says 279. So that's the way that's the way it's been. There's plenty of cheaper gas outside of Florida where I've been, with exceptions of Pennsylvania. Forget Pennsylvania.
Well, yeah, and we see the weekly or every 10-day bump that they have, all of a sudden it jumps back up to 3 and 19 and slowly comes back down again. So it used to be that it went up every Tuesday. Now they don't seem to worry about what day, but all of a sudden you'll see the gas prices jump. You'll see the inexpensive stations overrun with customers, and then you have to kind of wait for the week or so for the prices to filter back down to where they were before.
Well, I tried to pull into a Love gas station in Ohio, I think the other day before yesterday, and their price was 363.
Wow.
Across the street was another gas station, big gas station, with 3 cents more, 360, 366 or 367, or I'm sorry, 266, 267. And I pulled into the Love station at 263. The problem was, and they had like, I'll say 25 pumps. I drove around twice and couldn't get to a pump. And I said, forget that. I'll go across the street and pay 3 cents a gallon more.
Well, does it come as a surprise to you that despite the situation in Iran, where they dropped the bunker busters and uh, all the and they had the ceasefire with Israel, that the prices have not really? I would have expected them to jump significantly because usually when there's some small thing that happens, they take the advantage and to jump the prices. But this time the prices have stayed pretty stable.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Like I said, it's we did not see any kind of a big, at least I haven't seen any kind of an escalation of gas prices since we attacked Iran and all of that went on, which, by the way, just to quickly jump on that, was, I think, one of the most spectacular things the United States military has done in a good many number of years.
Well, yeah, according to the president, they were at a very high speed. The stealth bombers that came over, and they had to drop a series of bombs on a target that was about half the size of a refrigerator door, and they all seemed to have been pretty much spot on target. And it was a spectacular job by the United States military.
Oh, absolutely. And this business of what the Democrats and that are throwing at, saying that, well, it didn't do anything, they'll be back up and running in a couple of weeks, which is all a bunch of hooey. Because if you take a look at that uh, news conference that the General Kane and Pete Hegseth gave the other day was very, very telling in the way of details as to what happened, how it happened, and what the end results were. And on top of that, the congratulations they gave the pilots and all the people in the supporting forces that were involved in that strike was just absolutely amazing.
But yeah, it seems that, and we talked about this our last show, was the fact that this all seems to be centered a very, very small target, which was to take out the nuclear capabilities. It didn't have anything to do with military targets, particularly, and it certainly had nothing to do with the oil fields in Iran. So that it appears that the economic uh, activities have gone on pretty much uninterrupted. It was all based on taking out their nuclear capabilities.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think we definitely did that because now, I don't want to dismiss the fact that the Iranians could still be up to very nefarious issues. Certainly may not have to do with their nuclear capability, but they have all kinds of other things that they could do to us. Okay, cyber attacks, I think, being number one, and so on. But as far as them coming back anytime soon with their nuclear capability, I don't think so. And the other thing is, I think the Trump administration, we're not, and the president has said it, and a number of people have said it, we're not going to go after regime change in Iran. We're not going to do that. That's not our business. That's up to the people of Iran as to what they want to do. But I think the fact that we were able to do what we did militarily and shut down that threat for not just for Israel, but the entire region, because all the other non-nuclear Muslim countries over there did not want Iran to have that nuke and that threat of the nuke over them. And now that's been pretty much eliminated and so on. But I think we as a nation and we as people need to be vigilant about what the Iranians could do. And I've said very number of times that I think we're very vulnerable when it comes to our infrastructure in this country. And they still have a number of bad guys in this country that Joe Biden let in that, we've captured a lot of them, but there's still a lot of them out there that could be planning dirty deeds in this country, as a proxy for the Iranian government.
Yeah, we've been told about the sleeper cells, but it seems that this ceasefire is holding. Of course, President Trump got pretty mad at both sides. He rather he rather dropped the F bomb in the middle. He you could tell his level of frustration. I'm sure Mr. Netanyahu got a phone call, and through back channels, the Iranians got told, "Look, you both are going to cut it out." There was a little skirmish there at the beginning, and both sides are now claiming victory. But at this point, in this recording that we're doing, everything seems to be holding pretty well.
Yes, so far, so far. It's been what since 4 or 5 days now. So I think it absolutely has, and I really believe that the Iranian government, because not only did we knock out the facilities, but the Israelis knocked out an awful lot of the number of scientists and other people involved in that nuclear system over there in Iran. And the Israelis did that even prior to are going in and dropping the bunker busters, if you will. So I think that, Iran's been hit on a number of fronts. And I think this is something that what it pointed out to me, though, how absolutely vulnerable they were. The Israelis knocked out their Air Force. So they had absolutely no way of going after anybody like ourselves coming in there to drop bombs or do almost anything. So I think it was a total, I won't say a total annihilation, but a large part of their systems, military systems, scientific systems, nuclear systems, have been really throttled or shut down for an extended period of time.
Yeah, some of these so-called experts have been saying that Iran was left helpless. That they had no air force, they had no missiles to really do anything. And there's been another discussion about how this shows how pallid the Russian support was, because number one, it showed that the Russian missiles that they had were not very effective at all, and Russia did not come in to quote unquote help their ally. So this kind of not only neutralized Iran, but kind of put Russia in a second position, in a second base position, because they kind of let this go on without any help or any comment from them.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing that I really liked was that when Trump was talking about the U.S. military and the Israeli military, you're right. He gave them both a lot of credit, but at the same time, he said because what the way I looked at it when he did that, he stuck his political neck out, okay, to do that bombing. I mean, not only did he have to contemplate, all right, what would it do to the Iranian people, the Israeli people in the Mid East, but also what kind of capital did he burn by doing that? Because there were a lot of Republicans that took verbatim what he said when he was running, that I'll never get involved in a military conflict. And of course, they took that attack as a military conflict, and were kind of upset with him. So I think that was the big thing. And I think that was one of the reasons why he was highly upset. Look, guys, I did what I did, all right, to help you get over the finish line. But in the process, I had to take a big risk here at home.
But it reminded me of, and of course, President Trump is now known as Daddy. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, he came out, and it reminded me, you're having a fist fight with your brother, and Dad comes out and says, "Cut it out." And I don't care. You're going to cut it out, and you're going to cut it out now. Meaning, one or both of you are going to suffer the consequences if you don't. And you'll have to settle it later, because it looks like now they have both decided that settling down is the best thing that they can do, cooling off. And as he said, it's been a week or so since this has happened. Gas prices, and he also, I think, uh, issued a stern warning to the petroleum producers that you're not going to gouge people now because of this. He says, and I'm watching, and the prices have not really fluctuated that much. This is what we call peace through strength. I think that his very strong warnings, both to Israel and Iran, and also the petroleum industry, have kept things on an even keel. And it's hard. They've kind of switched the subject because he didn't really get involved. He just told them to cut it out and showed them how they were going to cut it out. And now we're back to peace. And there was only a small flare up. This is not some long protracted war like we saw under Biden or Obama.
No, absolutely. And the other thing too, there's 2 points too that I want to make. Number one, during this whole situation, the stock market went to record highs. That's number one. Number two, I think the other part of it is that, the Israelis also suffered quite a bit. They suffered a lot of casualties at home. They suffered a lot of damages because the Iranians, unlike the Israelis went after military targets and or military or nuclear such people. But the Iranians purposely threw all of their rockets into residential neighborhoods to kill or injure as many Israeli peoples as they could because they wanted to demoralize the people and turn the people against the government of Israel. And I don't think that really worked for them, even though, yes, Israelis suffered casualties and whatnot because of the rockets that were fired in. But also, their system, their golden dome, if you will, or whatever you want to call it, got really about 90% of the rockets that the Iranians shot into Israel, they were able to shoot down.
It seemed to have worked pretty well.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's the thing that Trump wants to build here at home too. He wants to build one of those systems, and that's why he's been after uh, Canada to say, look, you're going to fall under this nuclear or this umbrella of Golden Dome umbrella if you want, if you come back and we can get together on the things that we're asking you to do, which is back off on your tariffs. And he hasn't still gotten Canada to really recognize a whole lot at this point. So there's work to be done there.
Well, as Trump in his first term was able to put together the Abraham Accords, which actually even held during the Biden administration, uh, he, I think, will now, after this settles down a bit and they have a chance to kind of pour oil on the water, if you will, the Abraham Accords, I think, will be strengthened and they'll have peace in the region for at least some time while the president's there. I think that he didn't he didn't want to have any kind of unrest in the world, and that is the place where there seems to be the most unrest. And at least for the time being, that is it's all healing over a little bit. But I think that Donald Trump has yet another success, and apparently he's been nominated a couple of times for the Nobel Peace Prize because of this. Uh, we all know what we think about the Nobel Peace Prize, but it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Yes, absolutely, because there's no doubt there isn't anybody, and you've got to go back. You got to take both of the Bushes, Obama, Clinton, all right, Biden, of course. None of them, they talked about it. They all said, oh, we can't allow them to have a nuclear weapon. But what did they do? Nothing. Okay, literally nothing. And now finally, we have somebody that had the courage to say, okay, look, Israel, you get it to that point, and we'll come in and finish that off with what we've got. What you don't have, Israel didn't have bunker buster bombs, so they couldn't do this. It took the United States to make it happen. So I really believe that, this has formed a good alliance in the Mideast. Trump was just over there before this and talked to Qatar and the rest of the countries over there. So I think they've got a pretty good chance of forming, you're right, the Abraham Accords, expanding that, making it more powerful and more meaningful and whatnot compared to, prior to Iran suffering the devastating loss that they did.
It's been really interesting to me because his campaign slogan "Make America Great Again." He was going to be centered in on American issues, but he has been on the international stage here for better than a month. He was at the G7 conference. Used to be the G8 when Russia was part of it, but he was at G7 conference. Took care of some business and told him he had to leave. He went over took care of the Middle East situation, then turned around and went back to the Netherlands over at The Hague and worked with NATO and got them to increase spending 5% of GDP to guard against Russian incursion. So he has really, other than Spain, who apparently didn't want to go along, he's apparently got some methodology to help them become members of the club. But he has done a lot on the international stage in like four and a half short weeks.
Oh, yes, absolutely. No, I don't think there's not another person, and certainly not another past president in this country, that has got as much done in the way of things that he promised to do in such a short period of time as Trump has done. And now they're at this business of trying to get this bill passed, so they can move forward. Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth on this. There's a lot of things still in there that I don't think many people like. But dirty politics being what they are, it's a give and take situation. In order to get them, unfortunately, they have to have some Democrats to vote for this, or they have to get every Republican to agree to it, which a couple of them have said absolutely not. They're not going to agree to it, which, Rand Paul and Tom Tillis are the two right now that they talked about this morning. So if they can get those people in, they could still pass it, but it might take J.D. Vance to cast the vote that pushes it across the finish line.
Well, yeah, this big beautiful bill is what we're talking about. And I was hearing an interview, and I can't remember which senator it was, and they said it's 940 pages, and said, but we don't have time to read it. It falls way short of the 3,000-page bill that no one had a chance to read. But she said that we've been working on this for months. We have been reading this bill over and over and over. That they've been tracking this. This is not some bill that they are absolutely not familiar with or has not totally been written yet. They have been watching this, and the Democrats, of course, mandated it to be read, and it was read, I think, overnight Sunday. They had aides reading this bill verbatim, reading it into the record, and then they got 20 hours of debate, 10 hours for the Republicans, 10 hours from the Democrats. They believe the Democrats will take all 10 hours, even if they, do filibusters up there. Uh, but the Republicans won't take so long. But it's hard to argue against the biggest tax cut in history, and no tips on overtime, and no tips, no tax on tips, and no tax on overtime. I mean, cutting down a lot of this stuff out of the Green New Deal. It's going to be a hard thing for people to argue against some of the waste, fraud, and abuse that this bill gets rid of.
Yes, that the thing that's kind of really amazing about this is that they've got this bill to the point, but something I heard this morning, there was a IT guy that was interviewed on David Webb show this morning and whatnot, and he brought up I didn't know this because I'm not that big of a tech guy, but he said, look, this business of congressmen and senators saying, well, we don't have time to read it. He said, no, with AI, all you have to do is plug AI into what the bill has got in it. And he said it will spit out in a matter of minutes what the pros and cons of this bill would be. So he said AI has really reduced this business of a 20,000-page bill, and it's going to take a month and a half to read it. No, he said you just plug the bill into an AI system, and it'll spit out for you the pros and cons, the good and bad, the pluses and minuses of that bill. So
I,
that may be something going forward that'll really help improve and unmask some of the secretive stuff that these guys put in these bills.
Yeah, that's one. The thing about AI, and I have been using AI. You have to watch out for who's doing the programming of it, because some of the things I've asked AI to research they've done a pretty good job. Some of it is stuff that I already know about. I asked it to do some stuff about the 12 hours of Sebring, and there's a bunch of it that it missed that I know exist out there on the internet. So it's a mixed blessing. But yes, it will distill things down for you. And if you have good tech guys, they can say, find me the little things that are. Do you find this wording? Do you find that wording? And it can scan within nanoseconds things that take me a couple 3 hours to research,
Right.
and
Yep.
so there's good and bad to that. And I know that a lot of these guys put their aides. They say you take these pages, you take these pages, you take these pages, and they do that same kind of research. So, and putting it all together in one big beautiful bill, there's pros and cons to that, and they have to pass it all together, which is the good thing. But also, there's so many moving parts in there. You have to. It is. It's not as bad as Obamacare, where they had a picture of a secretary, and the stack of paper that it took, single space both sides, was taller than she was. Okay, and it's not as bad as that, but certainly it's going to separate the wheat from the chaff, if you will, the people that are for this and the people that are not for this. And this Senator Tillis apparently has announced he's not seeking re-election, which
Right.
some people are happy about, but the other people say, well, then he's got nothing to lose. He can do what he wants because he's leaving anyway.
Well, the unfortunate part about, and it's hard for me to understand why, but North Carolina has really uh, flipped from conservative state to, I will call it at best, a middle of the road state these days. So, and the thing of it is, yes, Trump said that I'm going to primary you, okay, because he's gone up against Trump a couple times. But the thing of it is, he may end up being replaced by a Democrat. That's the unfortunate part about the situation in North Carolina today, because they've got a Democratic governor, and I'm not sure if the other senator from South Carolina is a Republican or Democrat. I'm not certain, but Tillis has not been a fan of the president. I think he's been an anti-Trumper almost from the get-go.
Well, yeah, the thing is, the Republicans, the American First Republicans, are going to have to work as hard or harder than they did for this last presidential election to keep the House and the Senate. Because without the House and the Senate, if one goes to the other side, that will almost negate Trump's presidency.
Oh
Because
yeah.
they'll have to work really hard to make that happen. But as we see these things unfold, I remember that, and we're running out of time for this segment, but I remember as the Iranian thing unfolded, it was going to be World War III. It was going to be the worst thing that you ever saw. Well, after the first week, there have been no attacks on American soil. There have been no missiles shot back and forth between Israel and Iran. The things have calmed down, and people are, well, I guess this worked out. And as he begins to undo some of these things, and I want to talk about this tomorrow, but there is this economist, what's this guy's name? Torsten Slock, who was ripping Trump about the tariffs, has now said, well, maybe he outsmarted all of us, And I said, maybe not all of us, but you certainly. So as we move into the midterm elections, the country may be going in a way that Americans say, well, things are going pretty good. Maybe we'll continue to let this president work out the end of this term.
Well, I think that's correct because and the big thing, if he can get this bill passed, I know they're talking shortly within next week or the end of this week, whatever. But to get that thing passed and then get it in motion. In other words, let the people see the waitresses and those people that get tips. All right, let them see some of their paychecks after this bill passes where they don't have to pay taxes on overtime or taxes on tips and so on. People need to see that. In other words, not to be political jargon, but to actually open up their paycheck and see, wow, I declared $50 in tips this week and I paid no taxes on it. That's really great. So that's where the rubber meets the road. People need to see these things in action and how it directly impacts them personally.
Okay, I think you're right, John. Hang on, we're gonna talk about more about this tomorrow. So you've been listening to the Barry Foster Show. Remember, leave your thoughts, ideas, and comments below. We'll get back to you, and don't go away because we're going to talk with John again tomorrow about all of this and more. This is Barry Foster, and we'll see you next time.